Good afternoon. Welcome to the Corporate Services Committee for December the 4th, 2023. It's 12:04. Let's start the meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First of all, the land acknowledgement. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandaluk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Any disclosures of interest?
Yes, I have
Mayor Jordan.
disclosure for the DIA minutes as our business did the planters downtown, so I just wanted that to be noted.
Which I think there's two sets of minutes on here, isn't there?
First one. I think it's
5.2.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And that's noted?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, next I need an approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howe. And a seconder? Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the agenda for December 4, 2023 Corporate Services Committee be approved. All in favor? Carried. Item 5 on the agenda is receipt of previous minutes. So how do I do them separately?
Save and accept. So the mayor just won't vote.
Okay, so I'm going to receive the 5.1 Corporate Services November the 6th and the 5.3, which is the Grimsby Downtown Improvement Area Special Meeting. So I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Howe. And the seconder. Councillor Vardy. And I just go to the next one, right? So now I need to receive the item 5.2, the Grimsby Downtown Improvement Area, November the 8th, which the mayor can't vote on, right? Okay. So can I please get a mover and a seconder for that? Don Howe, Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the following minutes be received. The Corporate Services, November the 6th. The Grimsby Downtown Improvement Area, November the 8th. The Grimsby Downtown Improvement Area Special Meeting, November 22nd. All in favor?
You should vote too, because we have the mayor voting. You should put up your hand just to
Sorry?
make it clear. Put up your hand just to make it clear, because at 3, because the mayor
Okay.
doesn't put up his
Sorry, I had to put my hand up. Because we need a majority, okay.
We should have 3. Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, that was carried, sorry. Item 6, we have a delegation from the Clerk's Department on records update and Freedom of Information update. Elise, the floor is yours. I give the floor to you.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to join you today. So as Councillor Frake had mentioned, my name is Elise. I am the town's Records and Information Management Coordinator from the Clerk's Department. And I'm here today to just provide you with a bit of background about our Records Information Management project. And I just also wanted to let you know the core role of my job is twofold. So I'm managing the town's records, both physical and electronic, and also ensuring that as a town, we're following the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act when it comes to not only our records, but the privacy of those that are in the records. So today I'd like to do a touch point regarding our corporate records management project, along with a brief touch point on privacy and our freedom of information requests. So firstly, I'd like to give you an overview of what the corporate records management project entails. The overarching purpose of the project is to take the town's records and organize them in a way that will help all of us. By having a system that is organized, it will reduce the amount of time and money spent searching for particular records, whether it's for a project or for a freedom of information request. Since we need to understand what records we have, an update to the town's retention bylaw, and also our classification and retention schedule is at the top of the list. So currently the town uses the Ontario Municipal Records Management System, also known as TOMRIMS, as a way of classifying records. By updating these, it helps us as we move into inventory and digitization of records. The inventory and digitization of records is one of the key components of our project, and it's also one of the most time-consuming. So we're going through each box, shelf, and filing cabinet in the basement to determine what records are permanent, what records are kept for a short amount of time, and what records need to be destroyed. Any record that we need to retain will be digitized. So this means that we need an electronic records management system that will store and manage these records. Luckily, we have Laserfiche. In its current state, Laserfiche, it can take quite a bit of digging to locate something. So we are starting from the ground up and we're organizing that as well. Along with the reorganization of our electronic records comes the reorganization of our physical records. This will happen after the bulk of our inventory has been completed, as we are bound to be destroying a lot of records, which will provide us with the flexibility to rearrange some of the shelving and filing cabinets in the basement. And then the latter 2 points on the slide, I'm going to address a little bit further. While it's great for me to list a whole bunch of things that we're going to do, I'd like to spend a bit of time going over what we've achieved already. Our TOMRIMS classification and retention schedule has been reviewed and updated. We want to keep using this as it's a great way of tracking any legislation changes and prevents us from having to create a whole new system to classify records. We're currently waiting for a few additional departments to review and comment on the retention schedule to ensure that everything that is listed there makes sense. Once this has been completed, we can update our retention bylaw. The inventory and digitization portion of our project started in September with our contract records administrator assistant, Marie. So she's been an incredible asset to the town for this project as she brings a wealth of knowledge with her, specifically from the museum world. By working with Marie, along with Janet and Tiffany from the museum, we were able to determine that some of our oldest records, the tax assessment roll books, required some immediate steps in order to prevent any further degradation. So I've started the process of wrapping each individual book in archival tissue, and then labeling the books and then moving them to the area that we've designated as the permanent records area. So records, especially fragile ones, need to be kept in a particular temperature and humidity range to prevent any damp or rot occurring. So the room that we've designated for our permanent records is smaller, and it allows us to better control the temperature and the conditions in that room. And it also removes our permanent records from being under water or drainage pipes that are running along the ceiling. So since I've started with the town in December of 2021, Laserfiche is something that I've wanted to tackle in order to bring it up to the level that we need it to be. We've upgraded our on-premises version of Laserfiche, which again is our electronic records management system, to the most recent version, and IT has moved everything pertaining to Laserfiche onto its own server. So in order to not add further to the somewhat chaotic nature of our current Laserfiche, we have created a new portion within Laserfiche that follows TOMRIMS. So TOMRIMS, again, is that classification system, and it's essentially set up alphabetically. So for example, A is for administration. Within each category, it gets broken down further, so we're able to categorize records to a more detailed level. So for example, under administration, there's 27 categories. To ensure that each department is able to find their own records, they have their own folders within each category. This was the invoices that clerks receive. Oh, my apologies, that's not right. So for this example, I've actually chosen category number 27, so A27, which pertains to drawings. Public Works maintains a variety of drawings, many of them pertaining to sewer laterals. A large portion of Marie's time in October was consumed with the sewer lateral cards from when sewers were laid in the 1970s. So each street that was scanned had a folder created for it, and within the street folder is a folder for each address of that street. So all of these addresses were scanned, and then the records that Public Works had on their own department drive was copied over. So we've actually discovered that some of the records that we had more information on them than some of the ones that Public Works had. So it was great for us to capture information that we didn't realize that we actually did have. We did want to keep everything all together, though, to make life easier for the Public Works staff. And then over the next year, they're actually going to be referencing Laserfiche just to ensure that they're able to find everything that they need. And then after that, they will solely be using Laserfiche. So while this is a very basic and broad overview of Laserfiche, it shows what we're creating it to be. Our goal is to make it as easy as possible for staff to find what they're looking for, so that rather than digging through boxes in the basement, one can simply go through our electronic system to locate a particular record. So along with reorganizing our electronic records, we also have to attend to our physical records in the basement. To help us in our inventory efforts, we've created a numbering system that is being applied to each shelving unit, filing cabinet, and box in the basement. It allows us to tell if a box has been removed or where it belongs once it's made its way back to us. We've also identified areas that we need to be aware of, specifically where cabinets need to be moved as they're directly under water pipes. So for example, we actually ran into an issue last week where a leak started in the basement. Luckily, it was in the best possible spot for it to happen because there weren't any records there, but it really does highlight the need for us to address this in the near future because we may not be so lucky next time. What's upcoming in the records project, you ask? Well, the inventory and digitization is definitely going to take some time and is the main focus for us. Luckily, we have Marie until next September, so we're going to do our best to put her skills to work and provide a full look at the records that the town has. We're also going to be looking at potential grants to get a summer student in to assist her in the basement. As we get further along in this project, a key aspect is going to be identifying roles within each department that can carry on with managing the department's records moving forward. This person would be responsible for tracking the department's records, knowing what needs to be destroyed when, and being the contact person with the town's key records coordinator. In order for this person to know the aspects of what needs to be done, we first need to update the town's records management procedure. We do have one that lists the steps of retaining and disposing of records, but we need to ensure it's been updated to reflect any changes that have been made. When I first started at the town, we had labels that were printed through a special program. The labels looked great, they were color-coded, and had Tom Rim's category associated with the records with a barcode on the back. However, the barcode wasn't linked to anything, and that was the main purpose of printing the labels through this program. So we would like to investigate an electronic inventory system that is linked to those barcodes. So a file could be scanned and it would show where the folder belongs, but should also show the link to the electronic records. And this would also be a way of managing a check-in and check-out system for the records, so we always know where they are. As of right now, we do have a paper version of a check-in, check-out system during our inventory, but we would definitely like to expand on that. So everything that I've mentioned won't work if we don't create user manuals, specifically for Laserfiche and for Tom Rims. There's going to be 2 separate Laserfiche manuals, one that's for the basic user and one for the administrative access user. For Tom Rims, as each department is going to be using a variety of categories within it, the manual will be a general one rather than a department-specific one. And lastly, but certainly not least, we do have to create a vital records and disaster recovery program. So this is the process in which we would identify the town's vital records and establish a program that would be linked with the emergency management program so that the town currently has in place. A vital records and disaster recovery program refers to records that we would need in order to resume or continue operations following a disaster. They would be the records that help us recreate the corporation's legal and financial status, along with preserving the rights of the corporation, its employees, and the public. So essentially, we need to identify the records that the town cannot survive without and create a plan for them if a disaster was to ever strike, and ensure that we have access to them to be able to operate. So I know this is a lot of information that I've provided in a very short amount of time, so I just wanted to recap a few things that I've touched on. While it may seem like the inventory and digitization progress is slow, a lot has taken place behind scenes. So not only do we have to sort the records before they're scanned, we have to remove staples, binder clips, binders that are falling apart, and rotten elastics. We then have to bundle the records in a way that makes sense so we can bulk scan them. In particular circumstances, we have to individual scan each document and save them separately rather than a big bundle, so it's easier to locate, especially if it's pertaining to a particular address. We have identified some permanent records that need to be preserved and have taken actions to do so. There are microfilm scans of each of the tax roll books currently at the library, but also some at Town Hall. We're going to be looking at potential grants that we can apply for in conjunction with the library so that we can convert the microfilm to PDF and make it more accessible to staff, but also to citizens. And a new and hopefully improved Laserfiche has slowly started to take shape. At some point, I will be contacting each department to have them review what they currently use in Laserfiche so that we can move it to the new Tom Rims format. To make all of this work, we need to make sure that our procedures are up to date and provide training to staff to ensure that townwide implementation is possible. By developing a system with input from all departments, it helps us create a firm structure that we can build on. As mentioned before, another aspect of my job is privacy-based. So this encompasses processing freedom of information requests, privacy impact assessments on any new systems that the town implements, and also providing general information to staff about privacy. So I think sometimes we all assume that we know what information needs to remain private, especially when it's dealing with other people's information. However, sometimes we do run into scenarios where at first it doesn't seem like an issue, but it does eventually become one. So one of the things that I do for staff is send out emails on different topics. In October, I sent out an email about how to deal with emails from citizens. As I know that members of council are at the forefront of being in contact with citizens, I just wanted to share this information with you as well. So say that you receive an email from a citizen and it mostly contains questions for you, as you've been dealing with them for the past month. However, there are 1 or 2 questions that need to be sent to a specific department in town in order for them to address it. The contents of the email have the personal phone number for that citizen, along with their full name, home address, and obviously their email address. So how do you send the questions to the other department? Do you A, forward the email directly to that department, B, create a new email and send the specific questions to the department, or C, file the email in your deleted folder and let the email goblins take the reins? So while this may come across as flippant, it's being done in order to get everyone considering their responses. So say your initial response to this scenario is to say A, forward the email. It's okay if it is, we get it, it's just so much easier to hit that ever so convenient forward button and send the email on its way. But before you hit send, did you have the consent of the citizen to send their personal information to the other people? It may seem a little silly to go back to someone and say, hey, can I answer some of this? I can answer some of this information, but staff in this department will be able to help you with everything else. Are you okay if I forward them your email? But in order to protect the privacy of someone that has contacted you, this is exactly what we do need to do. Is it hard to remember this? Yes, it is. Are we always going to get it right? No, we aren't. So here are some things to consider before you hit forward on an email. Did you ask for permission to share this person's personal information with others? Does the email have a complaint about someone or their opinions of a situation, along with the questions that you can't answer? Maybe you're friendly with the person and they've told you how their family is doing or about their upcoming vacation before getting to the questions that they have. So all of these things, along with someone's name and contact information, are considered personal information. So what's the solution then? You can always ask that person if they don't mind you sharing that information. However, if you don't have the time to wait for their response, then create a new email and just send the questions that that person has to the staff in order for them to respond. There's so many different outliers when it comes to dealing with someone else's personal information. So when in doubt, just ask them or start a new email. At the end of the day, if you go back and ask their permission, it shows that you've taken their privacy into consideration. And the more that we do this, the quicker it will become second nature. So overall, if someone has directly emailed you, it does not mean that they have given their consent for you to share their information with others. The scenario that I used, and answer A, would be considered a privacy breach, which means that a complaint can be filed with the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario, and we could potentially face fines. So this is always going to be situation-based, especially when it comes to the email that has been sent and that needs to be forwarded. To be brief, if you feel that the whole content of the email must be sent to another staff member to perform their job, then it is not a privacy breach to share that information. If you aren't sure that you can share the email that you have, you can create a new email or ask the sender for permission to share their information. I had also proposed some alternative options to CLT, one of them being that we could have a standardized email signature that has a portion in the bottom that says, that essentially advises the sender that if the person you're dealing with is unable to answer your questions, your email will be forwarded to that department that can assist you. So Christina, our communications specialist, and Nicole from the CAO's office and myself have met and are in the process of implementing this. And now to our last topic of the afternoon, freedom of information requests. So in 2021, the town of Grimsby received 20 freedom of information requests. In 2022, we had 77 FOI requests. And as of today, we have 24. So as you can see, between 2021 and 2022, we had a significant increase in FOI requests. There isn't any particular reason for this influx beyond the fact that we had far more people requesting a copy of a survey for their property. So in fact, almost half of the requests in 2022 were for surveys. As you can imagine, FOIs were consuming a fair bit of staff time in 2022. So one of the recommendations from the IPC, the Information Privacy Commissioner of Ontario, is to create an active dissemination and routine disclosure policy for your municipality. So active dissemination refers to the town releasing certain records without anyone requesting them, such as bylaws or minutes from council meetings. Routine disclosure is when we have someone asking for specific records that can be released without any redactions of personal information. So in an effort to increase access to records and provide transparency to citizens, along with reducing the number of FOI requests we were receiving, we did create and implemented a routine disclosure policy in April of 2023, so April of this year. There are set parameters for routine disclosure requests. So for example, proof of ownership is required before we will release anything pertaining to someone's home. Along with reducing administrative costs and staff resources, our response timeframes are quicker compared to that of MFIPA. So the impact to revenue is also minimal, as we are set to the fees outlined in MFIPA for FOI requests, but we do have a little bit more flexibility under the routine disclosure policy. There is an application fee of $10 right now for anyone that is applying for routine disclosure, and there's the potential for additional fees based on the records that they have requested. So we have seen a significant reduction in FOI requests, which has allowed us to focus on the corporate records management project. We've also implemented an FOI-based software called Veil, which has streamlined the process for the FOI requests that we have received. So overall, with the implementation of our routine disclosure policy, it has allowed us to still provide records to citizens, but has made the process a bit more streamlined while reducing the number of FOI requests to process. So I'd like to take a moment to say thank you for letting me bend your ear for a little bit regarding records and privacy. We're excited about the progress that we're making with the town's records, and I look forward to sharing any further updates with you. So I know that I did provide a lot of information covering a few different topics, so please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for your time. Mayor Jordan.
Thank you, through the chair.
You're not the chair.
I know. I had my hand up.
Sorry, I just, as the chair, I'd like to thank you very much. That's absolutely fantastic information. And it sounds like a gigantic task. I've been down in the basement, so I know it's pretty daunting down there. So, but thank you for your presentation, and now I'll allow the mayor to have a word.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Elise. When was it last updated, the records? When were the record systems last updated? Just wondering.
So 2015 is the last time that I have really seen any major work done. That's when Tom Rooms was implemented. And I believe that is when the last update of our retention bylaw took place. So since then, nothing has really been touched, to be honest with you.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you for that presentation. It's obviously a lot of work, and it's obvious that you have a really good handle on it. And I'm glad someone does, because that would kill me. If I was ever asked to do this project, I'd be like, no, shoot me now. So thank you very much. Great job.
Councilor Howe.
Through you, Chair. At least number of questions that I have. The FOIs, now your initial, you mentioned $10 like a charge, so that's part of our revenue stream. But what do you think it costs each and every time there's an FOI? That's number one. The environmental controls that you discussed, and then you mentioned the interaction between the museum and the art gallery and the library. That's the next question. And what do you see going forward for us? Or what are going to be your requirements, I guess, and in a general thing? And we also have the Historical Society has their archives, which I don't know if they parallel, but is there interaction with the Historical Society as to sharing or how to, have they got stuff that we should have or vice versa? That's the next one, Laserfiche. I'm been around a little while. I remember microfiche and sitting there like this, going through the newspapers, trying to do a university type research, but kind of expand on that a little bit for me. Destroying records, and I think that a lot of people, if they haven't picked up on that, would like to know that there must be some type of a process for us, and kind of let's let people know what that is, just so it's not like Don Howe saying, no, it destroyed anything that got my name on it, sort of a thing, so that, we can understand that. You've used a lot of anachronisms, TOMRMS. Also, do we use the cloud at all? We talked about, are all ours hard copy, or is any of this in cloud, and those, that thoughts? To go to the emails, the signature, I think you may have answered a little bit, so that we can go back. For instance, what I do, if someone sends me an email and if they don't show anything, I say, I want to know where you live, because quite frankly, I won't do any work for somebody that's not paying my check, and my check says Town of Grimsby on it, not St. Catharines, Fort Erie, Timbuktu, or LaSalle, Ontario. So I think I covered off most of the questions that I have, and I'll leave you a bunch, so.
So I don't know,
Okay.
I don't know if you remembered all those questions.
A few of them,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I may have to ask you to repeat a few.
Okay, not a problem.
Anyways, go ahead. Alice.
So to go back to a few of them, so TOMRMS stands for the Ontario Municipal Records Management System. So it's essentially a classification system that we use for the records. And that actually links a bit to the destruction portion, because that's how we know how long to keep a record for. So for example, a bylaw is a permanent record. It can't be destroyed, and we always need to have copies of it. The same with our tax assessment roll books. And that's why we're taking the steps to preserve them, because they are degrading, and it is a permanent record, which means we always have to have that available, and it also needs to be available to the public. So there are other records that we only keep for a year or 2 years. So for example, any Freedom of Information request, we only keep that for 2 years. And then after 2 years, we have to fill out a destruction list, essentially. So we list every single record that gets destroyed. We list the category it comes from and what the destruction timeframe was, to make sure that we are actually following the processes that we have outlined. And then once we have enough records that need to be destroyed, we usually end up doing a bulk shredding. So what happens is a shredding company comes in. Actually, we use Night Archives recently. Iron Mountain is another one, yeah. And then we've also used Shred-it before. So a shredding company will come in and they'll remove the records. They're usually just in a very big recycling bin. And then that way we know that they're getting disposed of correctly. So it's something where they take it to a secure location. Only the people that have picked up the records have access to them, and then they provide us with a destruction certificate. So everything falls in line with that policy and that procedure that we have outlined in our records management program. So Laserfiche, it actually is a play on words of microfiche, but it is our program that we use for our electronic records. So it's just a computer system, that's the name of it. So right now the version that we have is not cloud-based. They do have a cloud-based one, and it's something that eventually we would like to look into achieving that, because it is very user-friendly. It's very much like an app almost, where it's very simple to find the records that you're looking for. So the version that we have is something that the town owns currently. And so all the records are currently on one server, and that server is located at Town Hall. And they actually just migrated all that information to its own server. So we don't have anything right now on the cloud. There are some security or privacy concerns depending on what company it is, if their program is located in Canada or the US, because there's a lot of different privacy laws with regards to that. So it's something, if we do end up going that way, we'd have to do our research on that as well. With regards to the Historical Society, I had answered that question thinking the museum, but I didn't actually consider the Historical Society themselves, to be honest with you. I really don't know if they would have anything town record-wise. It may be more of the museum where they have that link with them because it's more about the people rather than about town processes, whether it's taxes, water, sewer, anything like that. But it's definitely something we can think about reaching out to contact them to see if there's anything that they have that maybe we're lacking. So I know, for example, one of the tax assessment roll books, I think it's 1908, we just don't have. And even the microfilm versions of the roll books that we have that were done in 1985, they didn't have it at that point either. So I don't know when it went missing, but it is something that we are currently lacking. So it'd be interesting to see if maybe they have a copy of it, because I know the library has copies as well. So it's something that we can definitely look into, and I'll note that. So to go back to FOIs. So you had asked if we were capturing the cost for answering an FOI. So under legislation, so under MFIPA, which is the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, it's $5 for anybody to apply for an FOI. And then there's additional charges, $5, yes. So $10 is for the routine disclosure. So each FOI varies, to be honest with you. So based on the legislation, we can only charge $7.50 per 15 minutes of search time. And then for each request, we ask staff to track their time just to ensure that we are capturing it and that we can charge appropriately. But there are only certain things that we can charge for. So we can charge for scanning, but we can't charge for the time that it takes for myself to sit there and go through each record. So for example, if someone was to request all emails between a member of staff and an organization, I would have to sit and go through and read each email, which could potentially be in the thousands, depending on how long they've been discussing anything with the organization. So all of that is done without the requester incurring any charges, because I cannot charge for that under the legislation. So what we can charge for are any redactions, so any removal of personal information or anything that's non-responsive to that request, and that is based on 2 minutes per page. So if there's more than one redaction, but it's under 15 minutes, we don't charge for that. So 15 minutes is the cap. So a large number of Ontario municipalities have actually reached out to the province to advise that the legislation is outdated, including the fees and processing, but as of yet, there haven't been any changes. Did you have any further questions for
okay with
FOIs?
Did they answer all your questions, Councillor Howe? Mayor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I just to give you an idea of the cost, that's the same cost as when I did an FOI in 2010. So it hasn't gone up since then, and I'm sure the costs have gone up significantly.
Would the clerk like to say something?
Just briefly, I wanted to thank Council for supporting this program because, as Elise expressed, it's a long, tedious process, but we do have an obligation to take care of the records for the town. And moving it forward has been, it's been a busy summer. We were lucky to get someone who has archival experience, is helping us keep your records and those old tax rolls now, wrapping them, moving them. We've been kind of moving people out of the basement and taking over their space. But I wanted to publicly say thank you to Elise, because I know I kind of said, okay, we got to get this doing. We got to get this moving before there is any water damage downstairs, because as a clerk, you know the importance of the documents that are stored down there. And we've actually, it's been great because we've watched staff get on board now, and the understanding of just how important these records are to your town. So I wanted to say thank you for supporting this program, and it'll be ongoing. And that's all I wanted to say. And I want to say thank you to you, Elise.
Now it's my turn. I noted in your FOI slide there, 2021 was 20 requests, 2022 was 77, 2023 was 24. You noted that the 77 requests, that big number was mostly because people were looking for land surveys. Why that year? Why 2022? Why did it increase so much in that one year? Can you reflect anything on that? What happened that to kick that off?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I know a lot of it was people were selling their houses, and a lot of them tend to ask for it when they are looking to put their house on the market. So I don't know if maybe there's some realtors that are suggesting that they go to the town to see if they can locate the surveys or not. But we really do not have a solid answer, because anybody that comes in, especially for an FOI, it's not up to us to ask why they're looking for the information. We just have to tell them whether or not we have records that we can provide to them. So a few of them will say, oh, you know, my real estate agent suggested I come to the town. And one of the things we tell them is that there are absolutely no guarantees we'll have those records. And if we have them, they are not accurate. So it's just, sometimes people want it for information purposes as well, so.
I just want you to walk me through something. First of all, you have to decide what we need to keep. I mean, that's a big job in itself. I mean, how do you make that decision?
Tom Rims is the main way of making that decision, that classification system, because it tells us by legislation. It looks at all of the legislation that's out there for financial records, public works, anything water quality management. They have set timeframes, and they take that into account and tell us that, okay, we may need to keep that for 15 years. A lot of financial records are usually about 7 years that we have to keep them. Some of them are permanent, so if a property is registered for tax sale, that's a permanent record. So it really does depend on that classification system. And that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we're on top of updating that, so that if there's any changes in legislation, we're capturing it and we're not destroying something that we shouldn't be destroying.
I know there's millions of documents down there, but I'm just curious, I mean, how long, you pick up a physical piece of paper or a file, and you go through it and you say, yes, no, yes, no. I mean, how long can you do that without saying, yes, this one is yes, that one's no, this one's yes, that one's no. So, I mean, how long can someone spend doing that? I mean, it's got to be very tedious and very boring and very easy to make a mistake.
So Marie, we are very lucky to have her, to be honest. She's actually incredibly enthusiastic about this project. Like I said, she comes from a museum background, so she was very much artifact-based. So this is a little bit of a newer world for her, paper-wise. But anything that she has questions about gets put to the side, and then her and I will sit and go through it. If we aren't able to ask it or answer that question, we go to the subject matter experts, so the people within the departments, to have them give us the final yes or no as to whether or not it's a record that we should be keeping or one that needs to be disposed of because we have long met the retention for it.
Sorry, this is a document that you feel is worthy of keeping. So what's the first thing that happens to it? Okay, you decide this is one we're going to keep in the archives. So what's the next step after that?
The next step would be to have it in a location. It depends on how you use the record. So say it's an invoice for accounts payable.
Assume it's an invoice.
So for the next 6 months, they know they need to reference it a few times. So they'll keep it in a filing cabinet upstairs until they know it's no longer active. So we call those active records. And then it switches to an inactive status, where they know, you know what, I've used it as much as I need to, but I still need to keep it for our record purposes. So when it's inactive, everything gets shifted down to the basement. And that's when we start with the storage down there. And we're gonna be setting it up based on departments. And within the departments, we're gonna try to use the Tom Rims classification. It may not work out. That's gonna be something we need to figure out on the shelves. But as long as we have that inventory system where we can see, okay, box number 24 on bay number 1 is located on shelf 2. So it's just, that's how we have our system set up at the moment.
Okay, so these aren't being photocopied or filmed or microfiched. Yeah, I know that too, Councillor Howe. So they're just, you're indexing the box and what's in the box, but not the actual, you're not taking photographs or microfilming the actual document.
Yes, we are.
I just don't understand that, yeah.
It depends on the department, and that's something, again, with our new process that we want to make sure is in place. So finance is actually very good at making sure they have digital copies of their records. Sometimes they do have to reference the physical copy, and that's why it's important to keep it physically up there with them. But typically it is scanned to them, and that's what they would use to do any payments, whether it's accounts receivable, accounts payable, something like that. So there's not one set process in place currently, but it is something that we are looking at.
That's it for me, thank you. Councillor Vardy?
I'm just wondering if there's any, well, two things. But one, does the gallery have any kind of system that basically logs, identifies the assets and their value? Because I know, I mean, the last time I went there, we had a, God, who was that guy with the white hair and the big glasses? And yeah, we have an Andy Warhol in there. So, I mean, so we probably have some things that are of value. So, one, I'm wondering if we have a system in place that basically logs those assets and identifies their value, which could be, for some pieces, accruing, right? And I guess the other question is, should we offer our space for the Historical Society to protect those records? Because while they're not official town records, they document our history, and it would be a shame if they got water damaged, or, like, we should be able to try and protect those. So those are the two things that come to mind.
So Councillor Howe actually had a similar question about whether or not we were working with the museum or the art gallery, and we've actually talked with both of them. So as I mentioned before, Janet and Tiffany from the museum did actually physically come to Town Hall, and one of the things that we showed them was the historical records that we know of so far. So with the tax records, it's something that we want to physically keep here right now, but there are other things that we have no direct use for at this time, but we are mandated to keep. So an example is the births, deaths, and marriages register. So that's something that is still considered a permanent record. The province has actually taken over all of those, but we have to keep those. So once we know how many types of records or documents that we need to send to the museum, they're actually going to come and take them, and that's
But
something.
the Historical Society is not, it's not part of the town. It's an independent organization, so they have to earn their own money to survive and whatever. So I'm wondering if we could make the offer to protect their records the way that we're protecting our records, because they have a lot of things that are irreplaceable and important to Grimsby, not necessarily formally as a municipality, but they're important.
So as I had mentioned to Councillor Howe, I haven't really dealt with the Historical Society, to be honest with you. And it's something I'm more than happy, and it makes perfect sense to reach out to them to see what type of records that they have. The museum is the one that I have had contact with. And just because it is town-based, that's why we're okay with sharing the births, deaths register, or births, deaths, marriages register with them. But again, I'm definitely more than willing to look into the Historical Society and to update you on what they say and what we're able to do within the realms of our capacity.
And what about the art gallery? Do you know anything about how they're keeping their assets?
So the art gallery and the museum use a system called Past Perfect, and it's very museum-based. I think a number of museums across Ontario, specifically linked to municipalities, use that. It is not something that would work the best for us, for our purposes, because it's more artifact-based, whereas we are looking for electronic records management. So we use the items a lot differently.
I just want to make sure they've got a system in place that is, you know, accounting for those assets.
They definitely do, and it is an electronic system that they use.
Councillor Howe?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Elise. First of all, your entire presentation is available, you know, it's available to us, and we got it on our package, but just so everybody knows that it's right there and certainly available. Is there any interaction, here we're talking about within the town, but beyond our town border, for instance, Lincoln, West, whoever, is there sharing of software? Is there sharing of, when do you get together? Do you discuss problems, et cetera, et cetera? So
So the Niagara region does have a records management group, and we do meet quarterly. So our next meeting is actually coming up in January, and we hosted one in June, I believe it was. So we do discuss a lot of the situations that we run into. To be frank, a lot of the municipalities are in the same state with their records. So a lot of them are just going through doing digitization efforts, different things like that. So we are essentially at par with those municipalities. For sharing resources, we have discussed it when it comes to privacy impact assessments. There are certain softwares that are available. That's been very ground floor. We haven't moved beyond just discussing that, so it's something that may potentially come about. But when it comes to records themselves, each municipality is different. Not everyone uses the same classification, so sometimes it is hard to be able to share resources that way.
Seeing no further questions, can I please get a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Mayor Jordan, Councillor Howe. Resolved that the presentation from the Clerk's Department on records update and Freedom of Information update be received. All in favor? Carried. Forgot that part. No consent reports, no discussion reports, no correspondence. Is there any other business pertaining to this committee? Councillor Howe.
Excuse me, Chair. If it's pertinent to us, but I'm getting a lot of feedback, and not just, I got an email this morning, which maybe some other people got, asking me about GSS and what's happening with the, you know, the property and the old GSS. And, you know, I think it's something we should have a bit of awareness of, and it's not something we can thrash out right now unless someone's got information that we don't have, but just going forward.
I don't think this is the committee for that, but maybe you can speak to Bonnie afterwards.
Yeah.
But no, I would think that corporate services wouldn't be the forum for that particular. I know what you're talking about. So, thanks, Councillor Howe. Any other business? Seeing none. Our next meeting is going to be held on January 15th in next year at 12 p.m. in this chamber. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.